I bought my own house in secret, until my mom used my key to show it to my brother and his pregnant wife, saying they needed it more. I never planned to keep the house a secret forever, but when no one asks about your life, silence slowly becomes a habit. That was how it started. With silence. Then, little by little, it became mine. All mine. I bought the house with money I had saved quietly for years, along with my grandmother's inheritance, which I had kept untouched in a separate account. While my siblings accepted help, as if it were their birthright, I worked late cleaning teeth at the dental clinic, then spent my weekends photographing weddings, graduations, and families I did not even know. I cut corners everywhere I could. I learned to make rice in 10 different ways. I said no to everything fun, everything indulgent, everything spontaneous. There was no safety net waiting for me. There was only discipline, exhaustion, and the quiet thought that maybe, someday, all of it would pay off. The house was not glamorous. It was a small two-bedroom bungalow in an older neighborhood, with creaky stairs and wallpaper that looked like it had survived another decade. But the moment I saw it, I knew it was never really about the house itself. It was about what the house represented. Something I built on my own. Something no one handed to me. Something no one could claim they had made possible. I did not tell my family. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted power. I kept it quiet because I already knew how it would go. My mother would frown and ask, "Alone?" My brother would laugh like it was cute. My father would nod as if I had done something tolerable, but not especially impressive. They had always seen me as the one who did not need much. The quiet one. The one who just got by. That is what people do when you do not ask for help. They assume you do not need anything. For a while, keeping the house secret felt like safety. I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes and paint cans. I fixed the leak under the kitchen sink myself, after watching 6 tutorials. I painted each room slowly and carefully. I chose soft lighting and warm wood tones. Every decision felt like a small rebellion. There was no one there to criticize my choices. No one to ask why I had painted the bedroom a dark olive green. No one to tell me to get rid of the mismatched antique mirror. No one to remind me that I was still single, as if that were a problem waiting to be solved. For the first time in my life, I had a space that reflected me, not what other people expected me to become. I still had my apartment near work, which gave me an excuse not to say anything. I told my coworkers I was helping a friend redo a house. That was partly true. The friend was me. The house was mine. My secret. Every free moment I had, I went there. Even when I was not painting or fixing anything, I would sit on the back steps with a cup of tea and watch the leaves fall, letting the quiet remind me that I had not failed. Not really. I had survived. I had made it. And even if no one clapped for me, I could clap for myself. When my landlord mentioned break-ins in the neighborhood near my apartment, I decided to install a basic security system at the house, with cameras around the property. It was not paranoia. It was practical protection for my investment. I told myself that maybe one day I would invite everyone over. Maybe I would host a dinner. Maybe I would reveal everything and let their surprise fill the room. Maybe they would finally see me differently. Maybe they would not. But at least I would be able to stand in my own house and say, I did this. That day never came. 6 weeks passed. I kept working both jobs, balancing my apartment and the house like 2 parallel lives. My mother called occasionally, usually to talk about my brother's latest business move or my sister's latest drama. When she asked where I had been lately, I said, busy with work. She did not ask what else I was busy with. I kept waiting for a moment that felt right. It never arrived. Then, on a gray Thursday afternoon, everything shifted. It was a normal day. I had just finished with a patient, a teenager who barely spoke, and I was in the back office, reviewing sterilization charts when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a calendar reminder. Motion detected. Front door. I paused. Then I tapped the alert. The video opened, and I frowned. My mother was standing at my front door with a key. She was not alone. My brother's wife stood behind her, holding a reusable shopping bag. Behind them was a third woman I did not recognize. She was blonde, dressed in business casual clothes, and holding a folder. I froze. My mother unlocked the door, as if she had done it 100 times. Then they stepped inside, laughing and chatting. The stranger turned and said something I could not make out, and my mother made a grand gesture toward the living room. It took a full minute before I understood what I was seeing. She was giving them a tour of my house. With my key? Without my permission. My chest tightened. My skin prickled. Then I suddenly remembered what had happened 3 weeks earlier. I had been sick with the flu, and too weak to drive myself to urgent care. I had called my mother. She had driven me there, stayed while I was treated, then taken me back to my apartment. I had been so foggy from fever that when she offered to grab my house keys, just in case you need anything picked up, I barely registered what I was doing when I handed them over. I never asked for them back. I lowered the volume and kept watching. The video stuttered slightly as they moved from room to room. My house, my walls, my furniture, my refuge. They walked inside like it belonged to them. I kept watching. They moved through the hallway like they were shopping. My mother's voice floated through the audio. The natural light in this room is lovely in the mornings. She opened the curtains I had just hemmed the week before. My sister-in-law nodded and murmured something. The stranger, who I now realized had to be some kind of real estate or staging professional, jotted notes on a clipboard. Then they stopped in the kitchen. My kitchen. I had sanded and stained those cabinets myself. I had replaced the knobs one by one after work. I had chosen a warm brass finish because it reminded me of the tiny diner where I used to eat pancakes after long shifts. My mother leaned against the counter, completely at ease, pointing out the original hardwood floors like she had paid for them. The longer I watched, the colder I felt. I did not yell. I did not scream. I did not call anyone. I just stared at my phone, breathing through my nose, trying not to shake. When they reached the second bedroom, the one I had planned to turn into a small studio for photo editing, the woman gestured toward the walls and spoke clearly. With a fresh coat of paint and maybe updated blinds, this could be a perfect nursery. Nursery. That word hit me like a slap. I ended the stream. My hand stayed clenched around the phone long after the screen went dark. Back inside the clinic, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone called my name from the front desk. I did not answer. I was sitting upright, perfectly still, but everything inside me had tipped sideways. I told my boss I had a migraine. I do not know how I made it to the parking lot without crumbling. I sat in my car with the engine off, my fists resting against the steering wheel, feeling the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. Not the dramatic, cinematic rage I always imagined betrayal would look like. Just quiet devastation. They had not even thought to ask. Not my mother. Not my brother. Not his wife. The idea that someone had entered my space, walked across my floors, opened my curtains, breathed in the scent of my soap without permission, made my own skin feel foreign. By the time I got to the house, they were gone. Everything looked exactly as I had left it, but it did not feel the same. I stood in the doorway, staring at the worn doormat, wondering how long they had been planning this. How many times had my mother intended to come back? Had she been waiting for the right moment to tell me her plan? Had she already imagined how I would give in? I went through every room, one by one, as if searching for proof. A cushion out of place. A drawer slightly open. A missing glass. Nothing was obviously disturbed, but everything felt touched. Violated. As if someone had been pretending to be me while I was not looking. In the living room, I spotted something on the console by the window. A piece of paper folded neatly in half. I picked it up. It was my mother's handwriting, slanted and purposeful, written in blue pen on the back of a grocery store receipt. This place is far too big for you. Think about what's really practical. You'll understand one day. No greeting. No signature. No apology. Just that. My throat tightened. I stood there with that note in my hand, and realized she did not see the house as mine. None of them did. In their eyes, I was just borrowing time, holding on to something until someone more deserving, someone with a husband, maybe a baby, could take over. I slept at my apartment that night, not because it was closer to work, because I could not stomach being inside walls that had been trespassed. The next morning, I skipped my usual shift at the clinic and drove straight to the house. I parked across the street and watched. I do not even know what I expected to see. Someone slipping out with a duffel bag. A sign on the lawn. Another stranger at the door. Nothing happened. Just silence. I texted my mother only 4 words. I need my key back. She replied 20 minutes later. I still have it from when you were sick. You shouldn't be out there alone so much. We're just looking out for you. Looking out for me. I did not answer. I could not. I sat on the floor with my legs pulled to my chest and stared at the blank wall. I had not decided how to decorate yet. There had been so many moments I wanted to share with someone. How proud I felt the first time I fixed a leaky faucet. How warm the kitchen looked at dusk. How soft the bedroom felt when it rained. But not like this. Not as a transaction. Not as a gift to be reassigned. Later that evening, I checked the camera history. There was one other entry I had not noticed. From just 4 days earlier, my mother, alone, walking through my house with a measuring tape. My home had become a showroom. A secret she used for her own story. Maybe she thought I would never notice. Or maybe she counted on me not saying anything, the way I always had before. But I was not quiet anymore. I did not wait long. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in my apartment, with the note still folded in my pocket. My phone was on speaker. The screen lit up with her name. It rang twice before she answered. "You're up early," she said, her voice light, as if we were choosing a brunch spot. "I saw the camera footage," I said flatly. There was a pause. Not long. Just long enough for her to decide how she wanted to play it. "Oh," she said. "I figured you might eventually. You used a key I gave you for an emergency. You entered my house without permission. You brought people with you, and you left a note," she said. It was the kind of sigh that always came right before the guilt trips. "You're making this bigger than it is." "No. You made it bigger the second you stepped inside. I only went because your brother and his wife are going through a tough time. I thought it might help to see what's out there. And that place is lovely, but it's too much for just one person, don't you think?" There it was. The thesis. The sentence that summarized every subtle dismissal I had swallowed for years. "It's not too much for me," I said. "I bought it. I earned it. I live there." Another pause. I imagined her sitting at her kitchen counter, probably still in her robe, her coffee half finished, either not understanding why I was upset, or pretending not to. "I know you worked hard," she said, in the tone she used when she wanted to pat me on the head through the phone. "But it's not just about that. Houses are meant for families. It's a lot of space, a lot of responsibility. You're not even there full-time. And with your schedule?" I cut her off. "You don't get to decide what I can handle." "I'm not deciding. I'm worrying." "No, you're controlling." She inhaled sharply, clearly offended. "Don't speak to me like that. Then stop treating me like I'm 10. She laughed, but it was tight and defensive. "I'm your mother. I'll always care about what's best for you. Caring doesn't involve sneaking into someone's home and showing it to a staging woman." Her tone shifted. "She is not an agent. She's a friend. She works in staging. I just wanted an opinion." "You wanted an opinion on how to give away something that does not belong to you." She was just looking. Nothing was decided. "You're missing the point," I said, my voice rising. "You should not have been there at all." "She's pregnant," my mother said, as if that excused everything. I blinked. "What?" "Your brother's wife. They haven't told anyone yet." I shouldn't have said it, but they're desperate. Their apartment is cramped, and his business isn't doing well. This house could be a real step forward for them. I stared at the wall, trying to process the weight of what she had just dropped into the conversation, like it was weather talk. "So you walked into my home and imagined a future where I just handed it over. It's not about taking anything from you." "Then what is it about?" She went quiet. Then her voice softened. "You're alone. You have no partner, no children. You work too much. I thought maybe you would see that this isn't practical long-term. That it doesn't have to be yours forever." I pressed my thumb against the corner of the table, grounding myself. "Let me say this clearly," I said. "That house is mine. I paid for it. Every nail, every tile, every chipped bit of paint. It is not temporary. It is not transitional. It is not waiting to be handed off to someone you think is more deserving." "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being firm. You're throwing away your family over a house." "No," I said. "You are threatening to throw me away because I finally claimed something of my own." The line went silent for several seconds. Then she spoke, low and sharp. "You've always been difficult." I almost laughed. "No, I've always been quiet. That is different. I hope you can live with this choice." "I've been living with your choices my whole life. I think I'll be fine." I hung up before she could reply. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely calm. It was the kind of calm that only comes after a storm you did not start, but finally finished. I expected an explosion afterward. Messages, calls, accusations. But there was nothing. Hours passed. Then a day. Then Swy. Not even my brother reached out. For a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far. I wondered if I should have been softer. Then I pictured my mother standing in my hallway with a stranger, smiling as if she owned the place, as if I were only someone who had gotten in the way. No. That door needed to be closed. And this time, I was going to be the one who closed it. I booked the locksmith the next morning. There was no hesitation. No second-guessing. I did not even wait for the weekend. I called from the back of the dental clinic during lunch, chewing on a protein bar while holding the phone between my shoulder and my cheek. The woman on the line said she could send someone by noon the next day. I told her I would take time off work. It was the most satisfying call I had made in months. I arrived early. The locksmith was a man with calloused hands and a voice like gravel. He did not ask questions. He just nodded when I said, "Full change. All exterior locks." I watched him work, standing a few feet away like it was a medical procedure, as if staying close might make it feel more final, more real, more mine. When he handed me the new keys, I held them like something sacred. "Only you with copies?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Only me." That night, I slept at the house again. A mattress on the floor, soft shadows around me, silence everywhere. But this time, the quiet did not feel vulnerable. It felt earned. I did not hear from anyone for 4 days. No texts. No voicemails. No awkward apologies disguised as check-ins. Just the absence I had apparently triggered by daring to say no. It stung. Of course it did. But beneath the sting was something solid. For once, the silence felt like mine. On the 5th day, a car pulled into the driveway. I was in the kitchen unpacking groceries and listening to a podcast about art theft when the notification pinged. Motion detected. Driveway. I set down the bag of spinach and walked slowly to the window. It was her. My mother. She did not knock immediately. First, she stood on the porch, staring at the front door, as if she expected it to open on its own. Her purse was slung over one shoulder. Her mouth was pressed into that neutral expression she used when she was holding back a lecture. Then she tried the handle. When it did not move, her face changed. She knocked once, sharp. Then again, louder. I stepped toward the door, my heart thudding. I did not open it. I spoke through the wood. "You don't have a key anymore." A pause. "I figured," she said. Her voice was flat. Unreadable. I waited. "I just wanted to talk." "We're talking." "Through the door?" Through the small glass panel beside the door. I saw her shift her weight. She looked smaller somehow. Less certain. Maybe it was the barrier. Or maybe it was just the first time I had refused to make it easy. "I know you're angry," she said. "I'm not angry. I'm done being quiet." Another silence. "I only ever wanted to help." "No, you wanted control. That's not fair. It's not up for debate." I heard her inhale. Then she spoke with that carefully controlled tone she used during PTA meetings and doctor's appointments. "Your brother and his wife are going through something difficult. And I will never know the whole picture if everyone keeps making choices behind my back." She stepped closer. I watched her hand hover near the doorframe, as if she wanted to touch it. "I raised you to be practical." "No," I said. "You raised me to be useful, to adapt, to expect less." Practicality was just the excuse. "That's not true." "Then why is it so hard for you to let me have something?" She did not answer. "Why does it bother you that I own this place? That I'm fine without help? That I didn't need permission?" Her voice cracked just slightly. "Because I don't want you to end up alone." I laughed, sharp and dry. "You already made sure I was." I did not say it to hurt her. I said it because it was true. Every family dinner, where my achievements were glossed over. Every time someone else's crisis became more important than my progress. Every assumption that I did not need support because I was not falling apart loudly enough. She pressed her hand against the door. "You think I don't see you, but I do." Too late. A long beat passed. Then she said, "This is a mistake. You'll regret shutting people out." "No," I said quietly. "What I regret is letting you in." I stepped away from the door. I did not wait for her reply. A minute later, I heard her car pull out of the driveway. I did not cry. I did not shake. I finished putting away the groceries, sat at the kitchen table, and let the quiet fill the space again. Only this time, it was protected. It was mine. The silence stretched longer than I thought it would. At first, it felt like peace. I kept waiting for another knock, another voicemail, another demand dressed up as concern. But the days passed quietly. No messages from my mother. No unannounced visits. Just quiet. Then, slowly, the superficial texts began. My brother sent the first one 2 weeks later. "Hey, Mom's still pretty upset. Maybe reach out." A few days after that, another one came. No judgment. Just saying, "This isn't worth blowing up the family over. Think about it." I did not reply. Then my sister chimed in with a screenshot of a casserole she had made. "Missing family dinners. Let's all just move on." Each message felt like a pebble thrown against a window I had just sealed shut. Not enough to break anything. Just enough to remind me they were still outside, waiting for me to crawl back through the cracks. No one asked how I was. No one said what my mother did was wrong. No one wondered why I had felt so cornered. They just wanted me to undo a mess I had not created. So I stayed quiet. Inside the house, I found myself scrubbing baseboards that did not need scrubbing. reorganizing kitchen drawers, folding and refolding towels. I replaced the doorbell. I installed blackout curtains in the bedroom. I ordered frames for photographs I had taken, but never printed. Then I hung them in the hallway. Sunrises, foggy streets, stray cats, images that felt like proof of a life I had built without applause. Some days, I felt proud. Other days, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. Because the truth is, even when you choose distance, that does not mean you stop wanting to be chosen. I still woke up thinking I should check my phone for a real message. An acknowledgement. A sign that someone in that family remembered who I was, outside the role I had always played. But all I received were polite reminders to fall back into line. My days were full. Work at the clinic. Photo editing late at night. Errands. House projects. But the quiet in between felt sharper now. I had never been someone who needed a crowd. I liked stillness. But this stillness was not soft. It echoed. Sometimes I caught myself rehearsing conversations out loud. I imagined what I would say if they actually apologized. What I would say if they did not. What I would do if my mother showed up again. I never landed on anything satisfying. One night, after a long day photographing a couple who could not stop bickering between poses, I came home and stood in the living room for a long time without turning on the lights. The house was silent, dim, familiar. And for the first time, it felt heavy. I sat on the couch and tried to remember the last time I had laughed with someone in that room. The last time someone had sat across from me just to talk. Not to take. Not to fix. Just to be there. The thought pressed down on me, slow and suffocating. It was not that I regretted what I had done. I did not. But being right does not stop you from feeling alone. That night, I slept with the hallway light on. Just one bulb. A small defiance against the dark. In the morning, I made strong coffee, pulled on a hoodie, and took my camera into the yard. The garden bed was half prepped, the soil turned over, but there were no plants yet. I knelt and started removing weeds by hand, one by one, my fingers cold in the morning air. It was not really about the weeds. It was about taking control of what I could. The house had become my mirror. Strong, unfinished, marked by effort. But even mirrors need light if they are going to reflect anything at all. I was beginning to realize that I could not do everything in isolation. Not forever, but I did not want false connection either. If someone was going to step inside this house again, it had to be someone who saw me, not someone who looked past me and imagined what I could be traded for. The texts from my siblings stopped after I refused to respond for a week. I did not miss them exactly. I missed what they could have been. What we could have been. If they had ever truly made space for me to be more than the one who stayed quiet, the one who made do, the one who disappeared whenever it was convenient. When my lease ended, I started sleeping full-time at the house. One night, as I sat on the back step, sipping tea, the air turned brisk and sharp. I looked up and watched the sky shift. The moon was nearly full. I whispered into the dark, "You're not crazy for wanting more." It felt strange at first. Then it felt steady. I said it again, louder this time. "You're not crazy for wanting more." And for once, the silence that answered did not hurt. It agreed. My friend showed up on a Thursday, 3 weeks later, unannounced, holding a grocery bag in one arm and a bottle of red wine in the other. I opened the door wearing cleaning gloves, with one AirPod in and music humming faintly in my right ear. I blinked at her. "You didn't text," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "You haven't answered a text in almost a month. I figured you forgot how doors work." I didn't. She held up the bag. "I brought food." There was no point arguing. She walked past me like she owned the place, which was the closest thing to comfort I had felt in weeks. I closed the door behind her and peeled off the gloves. In the kitchen, she started unpacking. Crackers. Soft cheese. Grapes. A container of something warm that smelled like roasted garlic. I leaned against the counter with my arms crossed and watched her. "So," she said, slicing the foil on the wine bottle. "Do you want to tell me what's going on? Or should we eat first and pretend you're totally fine?" "I am fine." She gave me a look. "Please, I've known you since before you knew what concealer was. You're not fine." I sighed, ran a hand through my hair, and grabbed 2 glasses. We sat at the small table by the window, the one I had sanded and stained myself, with legs that were still a little uneven. She poured the wine, pushed a napkin toward me, and waited. "I told them," I finally said. "About the house, sort of." She popped a grape into her mouth. "Define sort of." "They found out. My mom let herself in, gave a tour, and left a note telling me to think practically." Her eyes widened. "Wait, she came inside? How did she have a key?" "I gave it to her when I was sick last month. I forgot to ask for it back." She set her glass down harder than necessary. That's insane. I know. And then what? I confronted her. She said the house was too much for someone single. She was showing it to my brother and his wife. They're expecting. Her face twisted. So she was just repurposing your life. I nodded. Exactly. She leaned back in her chair, staring at me like I was an unsolved puzzle. And what did you do? I changed the locks, stopped responding, told her she crossed a line. That is not just a line, she said. That is your entire boundary smashed with a crowbar. I let the silence settle between us, broken only by the faint creak of the walls and the ticking clock above the sink. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. What? The house? No, standing up to them. I took a sip of wine and stared at the grain in the table. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth the silence, but then I remember how she looked when she walked through my door like it was hers, and I know I couldn't stay quiet this time. She nodded slowly. You shouldn't have to. But I did. For years. And they liked it that way. She tore a piece of bread and dipped it into the container. I get it, she said. I really do. But is this it? Is this what you wanted? A house no one visits? A family that won't talk to you unless you apologize? It's what I needed. I was tired of shrinking to make room for everyone else. She met my eyes. And now that you've expanded, is there room for anyone else? The question hit harder than I expected. I swallowed. I don't know. She tilted her head. You don't have to be either invisible or untouchable. There is space in between. I don't know if they deserve that space. They probably don't, she said, without missing a beat. But you do. You deserve connection. Real connection. Not the kind that comes with conditions or keys made behind your back. I looked around the kitchen. At the lighting I had chosen. The walls I had painted. The silence I had curated so carefully. I wanted this to be mine, I said, without needing anyone's permission. It is yours, she said. But ownership does not mean isolation. I did not respond. We finished eating in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, just silence full of thoughts. Afterward, we moved to the couch. She curled her legs under her, sipping the last of the wine. I sat beside her with my feet flat on the rug and my hands resting on my knees. You're strong, she said gently. But you don't have to be alone to prove it. I closed my eyes. I just don't know how to be in the middle. It was always either stay quiet and be accepted, or speak up and get shut out. She rested her head against my shoulder. Maybe this is the start of something different. Something where you decide who gets in and who doesn't. That night, after she left, I sat by the front door for a long time. I did not check the cameras. I did not check my phone. I just listened to the quiet and asked myself, if I let someone back in, would I recognize the sound of real belonging? I was not sure. But for the first time, I wanted to find out. My sister-in-law texted me on a Monday, 5 weeks after my mother's last visit. It was short. Can we talk? Just you and me, please. I stared at the screen for a full minute. I had not heard from her since the last group dinner, weeks before the house incident. She had been quiet during the fallout. No messages. No defenses. No accusations. Just silence. And now this. I thought about ignoring it. I thought about letting the conversation die before it began. But something in the phrasing, just you and me, landed differently. I replied, tomorrow, 5, at the house. She showed up right on time. She wore no makeup. No perfect hair. No curated outfit. Just jeans, sneakers, and a loose gray sweater that made her look smaller than usual. I opened the door before she knocked. Hi, she said carefully. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in slowly, looking around as if she was not sure she was welcome. I gestured toward the kitchen, and she followed. I offered her tea. She nodded. We sat for a moment. Neither of us spoke. She looked down at her hands, fiddling with the sleeves of her sweater. I waited. Finally, she took a breath. I didn't know she was going to do that, she said quietly. Bring someone? The staging woman. I didn't know. I did not answer. She continued. I asked her for help. That part is true. But not like that. I never asked her to take your house. I looked at her. Her face was pale. Her eyes were tired. Not performative. Just raw. You asked her for help with what? I said. She hesitated, then leaned forward with her elbows on the table. We're not doing as well as it looks. Your brother's business isn't stable. He took on some clients that didn't pay out. We've been behind on rent for months. I blinked. She pushed her hair behind one ear. I didn't want to ask anyone. He wouldn't. His pride. Yeah, I said, more bitterly than I meant to. That sounds familiar. I thought maybe she could co-sign something, or help us refinance. But instead, she started pushing this idea about your place, about how it was too much house for you, about how it would be more useful for a family. That word again. She made it sound like you wouldn't mind, she added softly. I scoffed. Of course she did. I didn't know she had taken your key. I didn't know she was showing it like it was already decided. I leaned back in my chair and pressed my fingertips together to keep my voice level. So you're saying it was her idea? I'm saying it spiraled, she said. And I didn't stop it. That admission held weight. We sat in silence. My tea went cold. I wanted to come sooner, she said, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, and I didn't want to defend what she did. But I also couldn't just let you think I was fine with it. Were you? I asked. Her eyes met mine. No. I studied her face. I thought about all the years I had watched her slide into the family like the missing puzzle piece, how my mother praised her, how my brother had always been the shining one. I had spent years assuming they lived in a world of clean answers and easy choices. Now she was sitting across from me, fragile and messy and human. Why didn't you ask me directly? I asked. She gave me a weak smile. Because I assumed you'd say no. I probably would have. I know. We both laughed. Just once. A short, surprised breath of irony. I'm not angry at you, I said after a pause. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't hurt. I don't expect you to, she said. I just wanted to stop pretending everything was fine. Outside, the sun was dipping low, and streaks of orange cut across the floor. The house felt still again. But not empty. She stood slowly. I won't come back unless you invite me. I mean that. I nodded. At the door, she turned. He's ashamed, she said. I looked at her. He won't say it. But he is. About the business. About not being able to provide the way he thought he would. I opened the door for her. I understand shame, I said. But it doesn't justify what happened. No, she agreed. It doesn't. She stepped outside, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said. Your house is beautiful. This time, I believed her. And when I closed the door, it did not feel like I was shutting her out. It felt like I was closing something that finally had an ending. That night, I could not sleep. The house was quiet, but not in the soothing way I had come to love. It felt tight, as if the walls were holding their breath. My conversation with her kept echoing in my mind. Her soft voice, her tired eyes, the way she said, "He's ashamed." I sat on the couch long after midnight, sipping cold tea and thinking about him. My brother, the one who had always known exactly how to move through the world in a way I never did. Charming, loud when it served him, quiet when it did not. The one who never had to ask twice for anything. The one who somehow always had more room than the rest of us. I realized something that night. I had spent so long resenting how easily he received things that I had never stopped to wonder what he might be hiding behind that ease. It did not make what happened right, but it made it harder to flatten him into a villain. Still, that did not mean I wanted to forgive him. It only meant I could not ignore the nuance anymore. The next morning, I walked into the second bedroom, my almost studio, and stood in the middle of the floor. The pale light was soft and even, exactly the way I had imagined when I first painted the walls. I stared at the space and thought about how close I had come to losing it without even realizing. They had never seen me as permanent. That was what stung. Not just that they wanted the house, but that they thought I would step aside. That I would quietly move out of the way I always had. Out of conflict, out of attention, out of inheritance, out of need. And my mother, God. It hit me then in a way it had not before. She probably thought she was helping. Twisted as it was, she did not think she was stealing. She thought she was correcting a mistake. A house in my name felt like a misplacement of resources to her. Something unnatural. Something that needed to be fixed before it got out of hand. I sat on the floor and leaned against the wall, my knees pulled up, my forehead resting on my arms. This was the part no one talks about when they say boundaries are empowering. The part where you finally get what you want, and then realize how much you lost along the way. The house was safe now. I had secured it, locked it down, but I had not prepared for the hollowness that came after reclaiming it. The next few days passed slowly. My routines remained intact. Work, edits, errands, projects. But I moved through them as if someone else were steering. Not exactly sad, just detached. The idea came quietly in the middle of a Tuesday. I was rinsing dishes when it struck me. Not like a lightning bolt, not like some grand epiphany. Just a quiet, measured thought. What if I invited them here? Not to surrender. Not to smooth things over. But to set the terms. My terms. The house had become a symbol of everything I had fought for. Autonomy, respect, space. And yet, for weeks, I had been defending it from behind locked doors. I had not opened it with pride. I had hidden inside it, protected myself. But maybe it was time to reclaim it in another way. I did not want to reconcile for the sake of performance. I did not want excuses dressed up as affection. I wanted honesty, clarity, maybe even the beginning of something different. Or maybe just closure. That night, I drafted a message. Simple. No theatrics. I'm making dinner this Sunday at the house. If you'd like to come, you're invited. Come as you are. I sent it to my mother, my brother, my sister, and, to my own surprise, my father too. Then I turned my phone face down and refused to obsess over their replies. It did not take long. My brother was first. We'll be there. Then my sister. You're cooking? Can I bring dessert? Even my father replied with a thumbs up. That was his version of emotional availability. My mother did not answer right away. I did not expect her to. But late the next day, she sent, "Okay, thank you." No emoji. No elaboration. It was enough. I spent Saturday preparing. Not obsessively. Intentionally. I made a grocery list. Cleared the clutter from the hallway. Cleaned the windows. I set the table with mismatched plates and cloth napkins I had found at a thrift store. No centerpieces. No fake smiles. Just food and space. On Sunday, I cooked slowly. Roasted vegetables. Baked herb chicken. A pot of lentils simmering on the stove, warm and rich with garlic and thyme. I made a salad with shaved fennel because I liked the way it looked in the bowl. Not for them. For me. At 5:57, a car pulled up. I took a deep breath and opened the door before they knocked. My brother stepped in first, holding a bottle of wine. His wife followed, glancing around as if she had not seen the place properly in daylight. My sister came next, wearing too much perfume and carrying a bakery box with a ribbon. My father entered quietly, his hands in his jacket pockets. My mother came last. She hesitated on the threshold. I met her eyes. Then I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. Calm. Even. She entered without a word. The house slowly filled. Shoes by the door. Jackets on hooks. Voices in the living room. My brother wandered through the space and muttered, "You did all this yourself?" His voice did not carry its usual edge. My sister ran her fingers along the windowsill and said, "This paint color is perfect." I just nodded. We sat down at the table as the sun dipped low. The lighting was soft and warm. I poured water into mismatched glasses and passed dishes around. No speeches. No confrontation. Not yet. We ate. My brother asked about the new camera I had bought. My sister showed us a picture of a friend's baby. My father said nothing, but kept reaching for more lentils. Even my mother commented that the chicken was well balanced, whatever that meant. I did not rush it. For the first time, I did not feel like I was hosting to earn approval. I was not shrinking to fit them into the room. I had built this space, and now they were sitting inside it on my terms. After dinner, I gave them a tour. The proper kind. "This is the guest room," I said. The walls took 3 coats. In the kitchen, I pointed to the open shelves. I hung those myself. Twice, actually. The first time, they weren't level. They smiled. They nodded. No one interrupted. No one corrected me. In the bedroom, my sister whispered, "It feels so calm in here." "It is," I said. At the end of the tour, we returned to the living room. My brother's wife offered to help with the dishes. I declined. I wanted to do them alone later, on my time. They stayed for a while. Longer than I expected. No one brought up the incident. No one apologized. But there was a shift. Small. Undeniable. A soft recognition in the air. When they stood to leave, my mother lingered near the door. She looked at me. Not over me. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice was low. "You've made something beautiful." I nodded. "Thank you." She opened her mouth as if she might say more. Then she simply squeezed my hand once, lightly, and walked out. I stood at the door for a long moment after it closed. Not because I was unsure, because I was not. They had come. They had seen. And I had remained whole. After everyone left, I cleaned the kitchen slowly and methodically. The dishes clinked softly in the sink. The leftover wine sat open on the counter, catching the last light from the window. It had not been perfect. No one had fallen to their knees apologizing. No one had delivered the speech I had sometimes imagined. The one where they acknowledged every moment I had been overlooked. Every assumption they had made. About my silence. Every time they mistook my independence for a lack of need. But something had shifted. For the first time, They had been guests in my space instead of me being a visitor in theirs. They had asked about my choices instead of questioning them. They had seen what I had built instead of focusing on what they thought I lacked. It was a beginning. Maybe not the one I had dreamed of, but one I could work with. The house felt different afterward. Still mine, but no longer defensive, like it had exhaled. Over the following weeks, the texts started again. But they were different now. My sister sent me a photo of a sunset from her apartment balcony. Made me think of your dining room lighting. My brother forwarded an article about small business photography trends. Thought you might find this interesting. Even my mother texted once. How is the garden coming along? Small gestures. Nothing dramatic, but consistent in a way that felt intentional instead of obligatory. I did not respond to every message immediately. I was not performing gratitude. I was not rushing to rebuild what had been broken. But I did not ignore them either. I was learning something new. I could engage without disappearing. I could set boundaries without building walls. Family could be something I participated in, not something that simply happened to me. It would take time. Maybe a long time. Trust does not rebuild overnight. Patterns that took years to form do not dissolve with a single dinner. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a choice in how this story continued. And that choice was mine to make. On my terms. In my house. Where I belonged.